There is a medication right now that costs over $1,000 a month. Doctors are prescribing it at record rates. Celebrities are talking about it. And yes, for a lot of people, it works. It's called Ozempic. And here's what almost nobody is telling you. There's a root, an ancient root, that activates the exact same fat-burning pathway in your body. The same pathway Ozempic was designed to trigger for about $3 a pound at your local grocery store. Now, I'm not saying throw away your prescription. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is this. You need to understand the mechanism. Because once you understand how this works at a cellular level, you will never look at ginger the same way again. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the real science. How 2 specific compounds inside ginger signal your body to burn fat, control blood sugar, and shut down hunger. I'm going to show you what's happening inside your body in real time when you take it. And I'm going to give you the exact protocol, including 2 ingredients that make the whole thing work significantly better. Stay with me, because this one is worth your full attention. Now, before we get into ginger, I need to explain something. Because if you don't understand this one hormone, none of what follows will make sense. It's called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. Now, what is GLP-1? Think of it as your body's I've had enough signal. When you eat, specialized cells in your small intestine release GLP-1 into your bloodstream. It travels to your brain and says, stop eating. It slows down how fast your stomach empties. It tells your pancreas to release insulin at exactly the right amount. It drops your blood sugar. It is one of the most important metabolic hormones in your entire body. And here's what Ozempic does. It mimics GLP-1. It's a synthetic version of that signal, injected once a week, that keeps your body in that I've had enough state artificially. Does it work? For weight loss, yes. The clinical data is real. But here's what the commercials don't tell you. A 2022 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine tracked patients after they stopped taking semaglutide. That's the active ingredient in Ozempic. Within 1 year of stopping the drug, participants regained an average of 2/3 of the weight they had lost. 2/3. Back. Are you kidding me? You lose the weight, you stop the drug, and 66% of it comes back within a year. That is not a solution. That is a subscription. And on top of that, nausea, vomiting, muscle loss. Because a significant portion of the weight lost on Ozempic is lean muscle mass, not just fat. That is not what you want. Now here's what's fascinating. Your body already makes GLP-1. It has the machinery, the receptors, the cells, the entire system. It's already there. It just needs the right signal to activate it. And that signal comes from 2 specific compounds inside ginger that most people have never heard of. That's exactly what we're going to talk about right now. So let's talk about what's actually inside ginger. Because most people think of ginger as a spice, something you put in a stir fry or a tea when you have an upset stomach. That's not what we're talking about here. Inside ginger, there are 2 primary bioactive compounds. And understanding the difference between them is the whole game. The first is gingerol. That's the compound found in fresh ginger root. Powerful on its own, but not the star of this story. The second compound is shogal. And shogal is what happens when gingerol is exposed to heat or drying. The molecular structure changes. And when it changes, the potency goes up. By some estimates, 5 to 10 times more potent than gingerol alone. Think of it like this. Gingerol is coal. Shogal is a diamond. Same starting material. Completely different level of power. That one distinction, fresh versus dried, raw versus heated, determines whether you're getting a mild benefit or a therapeutic one. Now let's talk about what these 2 compounds actually do inside your body. There are 4 mechanisms, and each one builds on the last. Your small intestine is lined with specialized cells called L cells. Their job is to detect what you eat and release GLP-1 in response. When you consume ginger, specifically gingerol, it directly stimulates those L cells to produce more GLP-1, your own GLP-1, the real thing, not a synthetic mimic, the actual hormone your body was designed to make. So when someone asks me, is ginger like Ozempic? I'd flip that question around. Ozempic is a pharmaceutical imitation of what ginger already triggers naturally. That is the more accurate comparison. And without enough GLP-1, here's what happens. Your appetite has no brake pedal. Your stomach empties too fast. Blood sugar swings wildly. You eat, you're hungry again in an hour, you eat more, and the cycle never stops. GLP-1 is the signal that says, enough, we're good. Ginger tells your gut to send that signal. The second mechanism is AMPK, AMP-activated protein kinase. Now, what is AMPK? It is the master metabolic switch inside your cells. When AMPK is activated, your body shifts into fat-burning mode. It tells your mitochondria, those little energy factories inside your cells, to pull stored fat and convert it into fuel. When AMPK is off, your body does the opposite. It stores, it hoards, it holds on to every calorie it can find. Shogal, the heat-activated form of ginger, turns that switch on. And here's why that comparison to Ozempic matters again. Ozempic works through one pathway. Ginger works through GLP-1 and AMPK simultaneously. Two metabolic levers, one route. Emiconzim 3, insulin sensitivity. Your muscle cells have receptors on their surface called GLUT4 transporters. Think of them as little doorways that let glucose enter the cell to be used for energy, and insulin resistance, which is what drives belly fat, fatigue, and blood sugar problems. Those doors get jammed. Glucose can't get in. It stays in your bloodstream. Your pancreas keeps pumping out more and more insulin trying to force it through, and eventually the whole system breaks down. Gingerol has been shown to directly improve GLUT4 activity. It essentially unsticks those doors. Glucose gets into your cells get fuel, your pancreas gets a break, insulin levels come down, mechanism 4, thermogenesis and visceral fat. And then there's the fourth mechanism. This one is pretty wild. Shogal activates receptors in your body called TRPV1 receptors. Those are the exact same receptors that capsaicin activates, the compound that makes chili peppers hot. When those receptors are triggered, your body generates heat, and generating heat burns calories. But more specifically, it preferentially oxidizes visceral fat. Now, what is visceral fat? It's not the fat you can pinch. It's the fat you can't see, packed around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines, your heart. That fat is metabolically active in the worst possible way. It secretes inflammatory compounds. It drives insulin resistance. It is directly associated with cardiovascular disease, fatty liver, and type 2 diabetes. And Shogal goes right after it. 4 independent mechanisms: GLP-1 activation, AMPK activation, insulin sensitization, and visceral fat thermogenesis, all from one route, all working at the same time. Now, before I give you the protocol, there's something you need to know. Because the way most people consume ginger means they're getting almost none of what we just talked about. Whether you've used ginger before or this is the first time you're hearing about it therapeutically, this part matters equally for both of you. Because the form you use determines whether you get the mechanism or just the flavor. Let's go through the most common forms people use and why most of them fall short. Ginger tea from a store-bought tea bag. The commercial processing involved in producing a tea bag destroys a substantial portion of the active gingerol content before the box even reaches the shelf. What survives into your cup is a fraction of a fraction. You're getting warmth, some anti-nausea benefit, and the taste of ginger. You are not getting a therapeutic dose of the compounds that activate GLP-1 and AMK. Not even close. Ginger in a smoothie with fruit. Here's the specific problem. The moment you blend ginger with banana, mango, or any sweet fruit, you trigger an insulin response that directly competes with the metabolic pathways you're trying to activate. You are stepping on the gas and the brake at the same time. The ginger is real. The sugar is louder. Generic ginger capsules from a pharmacy. These vary wildly. Most are simply ground ginger root in a capsule, with no specification of gingerol content, no standardization, no way to know what you're actually getting. If the label doesn't tell you the concentration of gingerol or Shogal, that capsule is a mystery, not a protocol. Now, I've spent years recommending ginger tea to patients dealing with nausea or digestive discomfort. For that, it works well enough. But that is not the goal today. Today, we're activating specific metabolic pathways at a dose that the research actually supports. And for that, 2 forms work: dried ginger powder at a measured dose, or a standardized extract with verified active compound concentration. Everything else is culinary, not therapeutic. The good news: both of those forms are inexpensive, widely available, and simple to use. And that's exactly what the protocol covers. Now, I want to walk you through something that I think makes all of this click in a way that science alone doesn't. I want to show you what is actually happening inside your body in real time. After you take a therapeutic dose of ginger with a meal, in the first 20 minutes, the ginger enters your small intestine. Gingerol makes contact with those L cells we talked about. They detect it and begin releasing GLP-1 into your bloodstream. At the same time, your stomach starts emptying more slowly. Food stays with you longer. The "I've had enough" signal begins to build before you've even finished eating. Between 20 and 45 minutes, GLP-1 is now circulating. Your pancreas receives the signal and begins releasing insulin in a measured, precise way. Not a spike, a steady and appropriate response. AMPK activation begins in your muscle tissue. Your cells start shifting toward fat as their primary fuel. If you've ever noticed that foggy, tired feeling about an hour after a meal, this is where ginger starts to interrupt that pattern. Between 45 and 90 minutes, Shogal is now fully active in your system. TRPV1 receptors are firing. Your body temperature rises slightly. Not dramatically, just enough to matter. Thermogenesis is underway. Your body is generating heat by pulling from stored fat, preferentially visceral fat. This window, 45 to 90 minutes after your meal, is an ideal time for even a short walk, because you're amplifying an oxidation process that's already happening. And by the 90 to 120 minute mark, you're at peak systemic activity. GLP-1 doing its job, AMPK engaged, insulin responding cleanly. This is what metabolic efficiency actually feels like. Most people haven't felt it consistently in years. That sequence happens every single time you take the right dose, in the right form, at the right moment. So let's set that up now. Here's exactly how to do this. No ambiguity. First, the form. Dried ginger powder, not fresh root. Fresh ginger contains gingerol. That's useful. But Shogal, the compound that activates AMPK and drives thermogenesis, forms when ginger is dried or heated. Dried powder gives you both compounds. Fresh root gives you one. That distinction changes the result. Second, the dose. Between 1,600 and 2,000 milligrams per day of dried ginger powder. That is roughly 1 level teaspoon, not a pinch, not a dash. A full, measured, therapeutic dose. A pinch of ginger in your morning routine is like filling a swimming pool with a garden hose and turning it off after 10 minutes. The dose is the difference between flavor and function. Third, the timing. Take it with your largest meal of the day. The GLP-1 response is strongest when ginger is present during active digestion. That's when those L cells are most receptive to the signal. With food, not before, not after. Fourth, the preparation. 1 teaspoon of dried ginger powder dissolved in warm water with fresh lemon juice, or a standardized capsule extract. Look for the words gingerol or Shogal content on the label. If those words aren't there, keep looking. And avoid any commercial ginger product that contains added sugar. The glucose response cancels the metabolic effect you're building completely. Try this for 30 days. Measure your waist on day 1. Write the number down somewhere you'll find it. Now, I want to give you something I wasn't planning to include in this video. Because the protocol I just gave you works on its own. The research supports it. But there are 2 specific combinations that amplify the effects significantly, and you almost certainly have both of them in your kitchen right now. The first is black pepper, specifically the active compound in black pepper, piperine. Piperine is one of the most potent natural bioavailability enhancers we know of. It works by inhibiting the liver enzymes responsible for breaking down certain compounds before they fully enter your bloodstream. It does the exact same thing with Shogal. A small amount of black pepper added to your ginger preparation. We're talking about 1/8 of a teaspoon, a few cracks of a pepper grinder, meaningfully increases how much of the active compound your body actually absorbs. Same dose of ginger. Significantly more effect. That is a very easy upgrade. The second is apple cider vinegar. The acidic acid in raw apple cider vinegar has been shown to independently improve insulin sensitivity through the same GLUT4 pathway we talked about in mechanism 3. It slows glucose absorption from the small intestine. It blunts the post-meal blood sugar spike on its own before ginger even enters the picture. So when you combine ginger and apple cider vinegar, here's what you're working with. Ginger activates GLP-1, which controls hunger and signals precise insulin release. Ginger activates AMPK, which drives fat oxidation. And ACV directly improves GLUT4 function at the cellular level, helping glucose get into your muscle cells more efficiently through a completely separate mechanism. 3 metabolic pathways, 1 preparation. The practical version: 1 teaspoon of dried ginger powder, 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar with the mother, a small pinch of black pepper, dissolved in warm water, taken with your largest meal. The research on each of these compounds is independent and well documented. The combination is logical, low cost, and safe for the vast majority of people. Which brings me to something important. Complete information means knowing not just what works, but for whom and when it needs a second opinion. There are 4 situations where you should speak with your doctor before using ginger at therapeutic doses. First, blood thinners. If you're taking warfarin or any anticoagulant medication, ginger has a documented mild blood thinning effect of its own. At culinary doses, this is not a concern. At 1,600 to 2,000 milligrams per day, it can potentiate your medication in a way that matters. That interaction is real. Have that conversation before you start. Second, active gallstones. Ginger stimulates bile production and gallbladder contraction. For most people, that's actually a benefit. It keeps bile moving and supports liver function. But if you have a gallstone that hasn't passed, that stimulation can trigger significant discomfort. Worth knowing. Third, severe acid reflux or active GERD. At high doses, ginger can irritate an already inflamed esophagus. Taking it with food, as the protocol specifies, reduces this risk considerably. But if your reflux is severe, start at half the dose and pay attention to how your body responds. And fourth, pregnancy. At culinary amounts, ginger is widely considered safe and is commonly recommended for morning sickness. At therapeutic doses, the data is less clear. If you are pregnant, stay at culinary levels and talk to your physician. For everyone else watching this, And that is the overwhelming majority of you. There is no meaningful risk at the doses we are discussing. Ginger has been used medicinally across multiple continents for over 2,000 years. The safety profile is well established. I include this not as a disclaimer. I include it because you deserve the complete picture. You now have the mechanism, the protocol, the combinations, and the context. Let me show you what the clinical data actually looks like, because the numbers are worth hearing directly. The first study comes out of Taiwan, published in the European Journal of Nutrition, a peer-reviewed journal. Researchers gave overweight adults a standardized ginger extract for 12 weeks against a placebo group. At the end of 12 weeks, the ginger group showed a significant increase in endogenous GLP-1 and a 28% greater reduction in abdominal circumference compared to placebo. 28%, 12 weeks. Their own naturally produced hormone doing the work. The second piece of evidence is a meta-analysis. 14 separate controlled trials pooled and analyzed together, published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology. Finding: ginger supplementation produced an average reduction of 10 to 12 milligrams per deciliter in fasting blood glucose. For someone at pre-diabetic levels, that is the difference between a doctor saying, we need to talk about medication and let's keep monitoring. But here's the number I really want you to hear. Check back in right now, because this is the most important comparison in this entire video. There was a head-to-head clinical trial comparing ginger extract to metformin. Metformin is the most prescribed diabetes medication on the planet, used by hundreds of millions of people. And in this trial, ginger produced comparable reductions in fasting glucose to metformin, comparable, at a fraction of the cost, with 0 reported side effects. That is not alternative medicine. That is a controlled clinical comparison between a pharmaceutical and a root. A 2015 study out of Iran gave overweight men 1,600 milligrams of ginger per day for 12 weeks and measured body composition using DEXA scan, the gold standard for fat distribution analysis. Result: measurable reduction in visceral fat, not subcutaneous fat. Visceral fat, the fat around the organs. And then there's this one. It goes back to 1978. Researchers in Japan were studying TRPV1 receptor activation and found clear evidence of preferential fat oxidation in visceral tissue. That data sat in the scientific literature for nearly 30 years before anyone followed up seriously. The evidence has existed for decades, across multiple research groups, multiple countries, multiple mechanisms. The question was never whether this works. The question was whether anyone was paying attention. You came into this video hearing about a drug that costs over $1,000 a month. You're leaving it with something that costs $3 a pound, works through the same biological pathway, and has 30 years of clinical data behind it. That's the whole point of this channel. Now it's your turn. Come back in 30 days and leave a comment below. Tell me what your waist measurement was on day 1. Tell me what it is on day 30. Tell me how your hunger changed. Tell me how your energy changed after meals. That comment section is going to be very interesting. If this video gave you something genuinely useful today, and I believe it did, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't yet. It helps more people find this information, and that's the whole point.